Hey guys, Pete here. Today I'm going to talk about one of the most controversial subjects that people are talking about in Game of Thrones right now. That is the coming together of Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen as a couple, or if you prefer, the shipping of Jon and Daenerys to use the parlance of our times. Yeah, jonerys. This will contain spoilers for everything in Game of Thrones through Season 7, Episode 4, so you have been warned. During episode 4, and even more so after, in rewatching the episode for the other videos I made about it, it became abundantly clear that Jon and Daenerys are moving into heavy relations in a hurry after meeting in episode 2 for the first time. This isn't a new idea by any means. This is something that's been speculated on since these two characters existed, basically. Once we realize that they're both very important, it becomes a possibility that they will come together. And there's a lot of other hints and things that come up in the books and the show that lead us in that direction too. For what it's worth, this isn't something that bothers me personally, but I'll explain more about that later. For now, let's look at 10 reasons why they probably are getting together, and why if you're against it, you're probably going to have to get used to the idea. Then we'll talk about some of the main arguments against, and at the end I'll add my 2 cents into the whole situation. The first reason on the list of why Jon and Daenerys are probably going to get together is because in episodes 4 inside the episode, which is where Dan and Dave talk about some of the parts of the story that they fleshed out, David Benioff says they're attracted to each other. Now, if anybody knows what's going on with characters in this show, it's the showrunners. They have creative influence on everything. So, I'm going to take this as an indication that that's part of the story, that Jon and Daenerys are falling for each other. The second thing that points towards this happening is that when they released the new photos this week, we get another shot of them together, and it's just inescapable to see that they are building up this tension, having feelings for each other. The third reason that they're probably getting together is because they are literally ice and fire. Now, the books are called A Song of Ice and Fire, so you could pretty easily get to the idea that one is ice and one is fire. And the main argument that most people have for this is that, well, Jon is ice and fire, so he doesn't need Daenerys. But I think it's a little bit more than that, and I'm not someone who's always subscribed to this idea. I'm just saying that with the evidence we have now, this seems to have a little bit more influence. And the thing is that Jon does have the blood of the dragon and Stark blood. But Jon also went up north of the wall and died, and then was resurrected. So there's sort of a stronger connection to ice than the average person there, right? He went and he saw the army of the dead, so on and so forth. Daenerys, on the other hand, walked into the fire. She went into Drogo's funeral pyre and came back out. So yeah, that's just not who their families are. There's literal connections to ice and fire for both of them. That one leads to the next one, which is they're both more or less perceived as gods for coming back from those situations. Like Daenerys is called the Unburnt. When Jon came back after Melisandre brought him back, she was convinced that he was Azor Ahai reborn. I've also heard Tormund tell Jon that the wildlings think of him as a god. And frankly, if he told more people about his resurrection, they probably would too. He came back from the dead. In the show, also, there's some similarities in the way they presented these scenes, and others, such as those iconic scenes where we see Jon at the Battle of the Bastards, surrounded by all the people, and we had that one of Daenerys where she was being held up by the freed slaves. This one also leads into the next one, and that is they're both super good candidates for the Prince That Was Promised or Azor Ahai. I'm not saying either one of them is, or that they both are, or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just saying that their paths to where they are right now are so similar in that we can make a good argument for either one of them fulfilling those prophecies. Also, if you think about it, Melisandre was wrong at first. She went for Stannis, but at this moment, she's convinced that Jon is Azor Ahai, and last season we saw that Kinvara was pretty damn certain that Daenerys was the one that was promised, is the way that she said it, but same prophecy. The fifth indication that they're probably going to get together is that they both lost their first loves in pretty tragic ways. Of course, we know the story of Ygritte and Khal Drogo, so I won't retell them. But suffice it to say that they both loved and lost, and neither has had another character that's come in to take that first lover's place. The sixth hint that they're probably going to get together is that vision of the House of Undying that Daenerys has. This is different in the book and the show, but in both, there's indications that point towards Jon in her vision. In the books, she sees a blue rose on the wall, which we don't see in the TV show, but we do see her at the wall. So if we look at that as the interpretation of what the book was showing, it pretty much points to Jon being important in her story. The seventh reason that they're probably going to make a nice couple sometime soon is that people follow them. In the last episode, we heard Missandei explain that to Davos and Jon, and you pretty well know that if things were the other way around and Daenerys had gone north and she asked Lyanna Mormont why she follows Jon, the story would be pretty similar. Now, they both had problems in that area. Jon being killed by the Brothers of the Night Watch stands out, and but in general, there seems to be a leadership quality that people are drawn to in both of them. Which means that if they were a team or a duo, or in the context of this video, a couple, that would probably be amplified. The eighth reason why Jon and Daenerys will probably end up together is one that's not very sexy really, but it's just sort of a matter of fact that there's no one else for either of them. Like at the end of last season, as Daenerys is leaving Dario behind, she points out that marriage is a great way to build up the power, and who else is in the running? And Jon's in the exact same boat. All of the characters all the female characters they've sort of brought out in the north, Lyanna Mormont and Alice Karstark, are basically kids. So there really isn't characters that they're developing outside of the two of them. The ninth reason goes back to the first reason, and it is the reason why I had decided to make this video this week. Everything we saw in the last episode just points to it. They certainly had feelings for each other that were coming out when they were in the cave. It's probably not a coincidence that they're in a cave since Jon and Ygritte kind of took things to the next level at the cave. When Davos asks him about looking at her, like he's seen her looking at her good heart, Jon doesn't deny it. He tries to switch things, and he tries to act like it's not the most important thing that's going on, which I said in my last video is absolutely saying that, yeah, I like her. Why wouldn't he like her? The evidence is just there. Whether you like the idea or not, everything that we've seen since they've met is pointing in that direction. And the 10th and final reason that it's probably going to happen is it just makes sense. I know a lot of people, myself included at times, have just not wanted this to happen because it makes so much sense. But Jon has seen the army of the dead. He rightfully is most concerned about saving humanity from these people. Daenerys is absolutely the only person that's in possession of a magic that rivals the magic they're up against in the north. She has dragons. Dragons are very good at burning things. So even though he's going to take all that dragon glass back with him, the real weapon that will be effective in this war are those dragons. So if you put all of the other 9 things together and add in the fact that he can't bend the knee or he won't bend the knee, there's only a few different ways we get from point A, which is them not deciding to work together, to point B, which is to work together and battle this very real threat that's coming from the north. One of those is a marriage, and the other one of those is if they have a child or if she becomes pregnant, and that ties them together without a formal marriage. And then there's a bunch of other ones that don't really go along with what we're talking about here, so I'll ignore them for now. So those are the reasons that it's probably going to happen, and there's only really 2 main reasons that people don't want it to happen. The first is the one that's most absurd to me because, well, no, they're both pretty absurd, but I guess I understand why the second one freaks people out more than the first one. The main reason that a lot of people don't like it is they think it's cliche. They think it's too predictable, low-hanging fruit for telling a story, whatever you want to say. People don't like it because that's what you would expect to happen. Now, I was just having a conversation on Twitter the other day that finally made this make sense to me because my thinking has always been the writing in these books is so good, I can't imagine that if this is George R.R. Martin's plan, that it won't be enjoyable. And I'm not saying he can't make a mistake and things can't go wrong, but he hasn't let us down yet. So I brought that up in relation to the idea that why would people say that it's too predictable and that's a deal breaker? Because that's sort of like saying we don't trust the author to be able to write a good story if that's the case. And the response that I got was that, yeah, that's sort of true, but some people have real emotional attachments to these characters. And yeah, now that makes a little bit of sense. See, these have not ever really been my favorite character. I like them both. I think when reading, I got more into Jon's story towards the end and started to grow a little bit more tired of Daenerys's, but they're both awesome stories. And the thing with these books are, in this world in general, is there's so many good characters. Mine just happen to be different people. So yeah, I get it. Some people might not really like this idea because they had something else in mind. And I see this all the time with Twin Peaks, which, that has the same kind of, people have been liking some of these characters as their favorite characters for 25 years, and to see them not be how they thought that they were going to be is really hard. And, my thinking is the same way there. It's like, well, this is, we trust that this guy is going to tell us a story. So yeah, that really kind of opened my eyes to that. So if you're really against this, that's why I'm saying you're going to have to probably get used to it because everything is pointing in that direction at this time. And then the other reason that people don't like the idea is because that they're blood related. And I could go on and on about this, but basically this is not a factor in anything in this relationship. Targaryens for generations have married brother to sister, so an aunt marrying a nephew is not a big deal. Plus, there's no influence of like a religion or a religious organization here. And, that's where most of that kind of stuff comes from in our world. But even there, it's people have been marrying their relatives with the blessing of the church for a long time, especially powerful people. But that's not what this video is about. Just keep that in mind. That doesn't matter at all to anybody. They aren't aware that they're related anyways, and they're probably going to find out this season, I would imagine. If not, definitely by next season. Shit, they might find out next episode, I don't know. But when they do, it won't change anything as far as their prospects of being together. It won't change the fact that they might get married. It won't change the fact that they might have children. It's just not a deal breaker in this story. So yeah, like I said, I don't really have strong feelings about these two getting together, but I have noticed that people do. It's really kind of fascinating how strong some people's feelings are against Daenerys. One of the things that makes this world great, these stories great, is that grayness of the characters. Like nobody's all the way good, nobody's all the way bad. The good guy doesn't always win, all that kind of stuff. But it's really kind of fascinating, man. People are ready to jump on Daenerys for anything. In this world, that is exactly that way. Like, I can't think of other characters who are somehow, like, on a higher plane of existence. But yeah, man, people get feelings. People definitely get feelings. So, tell me in the comments what yours are. Do you think it's gonna happen? Are you gonna freak out if it does happen? Stop watching if it happens? Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and set notifications because I've been putting out a lot of videos and you won't want to miss one. Follow me on Twitter and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.